So welcome, everyone. We are so excited that you're here tonight for our Gap Year panel. We have a number of people here who are going to talk about some great kind of out-of-the-box experiences that you might choose to do between undergrad and graduate school. We may have some graduate students on the watching the panel tonight. Some of these are opportunities that you could do after graduate school as well. And some of them are just experiential outside the box experiences that you might take advantage of at any point in time during your academic career, between or after. But this has been a popular panel. We've done it a couple of years now. And I've got everyone's name up on the screen right now. And what I'm going to do is stop sharing this in a minute. I'm going to pin all of our panelists, and then I'm going to just have them go around and introduce themselves. But before we do that, I will introduce myself. My name is Joan Marceau. I'm the undergraduate internship and career coordinator here at Rockefeller College at the University at Albany. And I work with students in doing internships and all kinds of career skills. This panel is actually part of our undergraduate internship class tonight. So some of the students, both in the classroom here and on Zoom, are part of our class. And then we also love to open this panel up to other students. So we have other students from throughout the university, as I said, probably grad and undergrad students joining us for the panel portion this evening. Our panel will last about an hour. So we really want to get everyone involved asking questions. So students, as you think of questions, you can, if you're in the room, raise your hand. If you're on Zoom, use the raise your hand feature and we can call on you to unmute and ask your question, or you can just type them into the chat. And my grad assistant Taylor is here to kind of watch the chat, and she'll field those questions or flag those questions so that we can ask those of our panelists as well. So it looks like people are still coming in, but we're going to go ahead and dive right in. And I will put this screen up at the end again so you can get their names, but let me stop sharing. And I'll just, as I pin you, if you can go ahead and maybe just introduce yourself, tell us what program you represent. We have people who are alums of some of these programs, some people who recruit for some of these programs, lots of different roles within these experiences. So Megan, I'll have you go ahead and start. And is it Megan or Megan? I'm sorry.
It's Megan.
Okay, go ahead, Megan.
Hey everyone, my name is Megan Kyle. I am a Peace Corps recruiter. I served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Tanzania. I was an education volunteer from 2015 to 2018, so I taught biology at an all-girls boarding school. And then I extended my service. I stayed for an extra year, and I was the Peace Corps volunteer leader for gender programming. So you don't want me to go into depth of what Peace Corps is at this point.
No,
right?
That's good. We'll get to that the next round. So excellent. Go ahead, Heather.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Heather Senecal, and I am a Rockefeller College alum. I graduated with an MPA, the master's program, and I'm also a returned Peace Corps volunteer. I served in Togo, West Africa from 2003 to 2005, so it's been a while now. And I was a community health and AIDS prevention volunteer. So I did a lot of work with local villages around a lot of health behavior change, basically, and then community development. And so I'm happy to chat more about my service and how it's really positively impacted my career since then.
Excellent. And Anthony works with a specific AmeriCorps VISTA program. So I'll have you go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anthony Swingruber. I am also alum of Rockefeller College, did the MPA program there. I was fortunate at the time to have done a Master's International is what it was called. And I don't think Peace Corps offers that anymore, but I was able to work on my MPA while also serving in Paraguay in 2015 to 2017. But I am here primarily in the capacity to promote our New York State VISTA program, which we run out of the New York State Office of National and Community Service. But I'd be happy to share in regards to Peace Corps as well.
Excellent. Jacqueline, who is a UAlbany staff member and friend of mine.
Hi, everybody. So nice to be here this evening with such a big class and a great audience and fellow presenters. I'm Jacqueline Letterman, and I work in the Center for International Education and Global Strategy on the UAlbany campus. I wear a variety of hats at the university. I teach globalization studies for geography and planning. I manage international exchange partnerships. I sign transcripts for study abroad students, blah, blah, blah. One of my favorite roles is actually managing external grants, scholarships, and programs for UAlbany students, whether they're freshmen all the way up through PhD, depending on what program we're running. And working with students, and Joan has been such a great support for me and my programs in recruitment and advising of students. I think it's really important for individuals to recognize that they need to have global experiences. Whatever they look like, I think it's very important in the global arena and the international community right now. It's very important. So my background's in the UN. I worked in the Department of Public Information and also political affairs. And I really love sharing with students kind of like how to get involved with those types of organizations and, you know, where to find themselves. So thanks for doing this, Joan.
Excellent. And Mark, not necessarily a gap year program, but we all are so excited that international education and study abroad is back. So please, we're glad you could join us. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Mark Curry. I was a graduate from UAlbany. I'm currently a study abroad advisor in the office. As a student, I studied abroad 3 times at UAlbany. And what I do currently, I'm basically working with students that are interested in studying abroad, and I work with them going on the outgoing programs to make sure everything goes smoothly and give them all the information necessary. So if you're interested in studying abroad, there's a good chance you'll be working with me.
Excellent, excellent. So I think to get us started, and like I said, we'd love questions from the students, but I always have a couple to get us started. Why don't each of you just tell us a little bit about the program that you work with, just kind of a quick overview, and for those who did the program themselves as well, you know, what was kind of the biggest impact? What was your biggest takeaway? Why do you think this is the best idea and everybody should try this program as well? And Heather, I'm going to go ahead and start with you this time.
Sure. So why I joined Peace Corps, and you know what I've learned as a result of it. So I kind of had the bug, if you will, at an early age. We had covered the Peace Corps in like 9th grade government class, and I remember at the time thinking like, oh, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. It really spoke to me on various different levels of, you know, the intercultural exchanges, learning from other cultures, sharing more about mine, the positive development goals. So it really spoke to me at a young age, and I decided right then and there I was going to do it. So I spent most of my undergrad career preparing for it, like learning as much as I could, learning another language, studying abroad, you know, everything I could do to get ready for Peace Corps. And I was really fortunate to be, you know, selected through the application process. And so, you know, I was posted, as I said earlier, in Togo, West Africa, in a small village. And I just, you know, spent a year learning as much as I could about like the rhythm of village life and like what people's priorities are. And, you know, Peace Corps kind of gave me a plan of like, okay, you're a community health and AIDS prevention volunteer. Here are some activities you could do. But it's really just listening and learning from, you know, my village and the surrounding villages about, you know, what their priorities were and what we could do together. And, you know, that kind of really shifted my mindset about like, you know, what is community development? You know, it's a conversation, it's shared values, it's, you know, just having that kind of a conversation and building trust with your, in my case, with my village and the surrounding villages, and then trying to figure out like, okay, what can we do together? And, you know, throughout the course of 2+ years, you know, trying things, failing at things, learning through that failure, and then like looking around to see what other organizations, other donors, and other international partners were doing, and how that was impacting my community. And, you know, you know, a lot of donors were, building things and then leaving, and the community was kind of left with this thing that may or may not have been useful for them to begin with. So it really got me thinking about, what is, like all of these programs, what is the purpose of them? What are they hoping to achieve? And how are we measuring that progress? And, what does impact even look like? So that really started me down that, curious evaluative path. And so, when I got out of the Peace Corps and started thinking about like, okay, now what am I going to do? I kind of found myself in that, that mindset of evaluation, and was lucky to find a program that really matched my curiosity and helped me build the skills and tools. So I started out with just wanting to learn, and then I ended up asking a lot of questions and trying to think through, okay, well, what can I do with this now? And that became my career afterwards.
Excellent. Thank you. Megan, while we're talking about Peace Corps, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your experience and your role as a recruiter with the Peace Corps?
Yeah, so just to give everyone a general oversight of what Peace Corps is, we are a U.S. government agency. We send trained individuals to live and work abroad for 27 months total. So it's 3 months of training that's done in the country of service, and then 2 years of service in a community within that country. Volunteers work in 6 different sectors. Education's our largest one. We are always looking for science, English, and math teachers. But we also have community economic development. That's our business focus sector. We have health, like Heather talked about. We have youth and development, which is working with kids like in an after school or a camp type setting, helping them learn various life skill topics and career preparedness. And then we have agriculture and environment. So agriculture is a little bit more geared towards like farming practices and animal husbandry, whereas environment's a little bit more targeted, the sustainability practices and climate change education. So those are the 6 different sectors that our volunteers work in. And we have about 60 different Peace Corps partner countries. We're back in, I believe, 42 of them right now. We had to evacuate everyone with the pandemic, but we're getting everyone back out there. So that's kind of just a very general overview of what Peace Corps is. Like I said, I taught biology in Tanzania for 2 years and then stayed on for an extra year. But yeah, I mean, I think what was the second question? Like, what is our biggest like takeaway kind of thing? For me, it was the relationships that I made with people. Heather did a really great job of like saying, okay, like you're coming in as a volunteer, like you're going to spend a lot of that first year just making relationships and seeing what the community wants and needs, and then what you could realistically help out with. But for me, I mean, like those relationships, it's such a huge part of it, right? So relationships I made with my students, as well as other Peace Corps volunteers and the other teachers and people in my community. That's kind of my biggest takeaway. But is there anything else you wanted me to cover?
No, that's great. We'll get more questions later. So that's great for now. Anthony, I know that you work with a specific program, but if you could tell us just a little bit about what AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps VISTA is in general, and then a little bit about the program that you're working for with New York State COVID response.
Certainly. So AmeriCorps VISTA can be thought of as kind of like Peace Corps' sister agency in a sense, because it was founded around the same time as Peace Corps in the 1960s. It's now under the umbrella of AmeriCorps, which is one way you'll often hear AmeriCorps described as the domestic Peace Corps. So it's doing community work, but here in the United States. But when VISTA, which is a particular AmeriCorps program, when it was first founded, it was a standalone program. And then it was incorporated into AmeriCorps in the 90s. With VISTA, it's more capacity building is a key principle. So it's doing work behind the scenes to build the capacity of the organization that you serve at, or the capacity of your community, less so direct service where you're working with beneficiaries. So the idea is to create new systems and processes, programs that will enhance the way that your community is able to serve their constituents. With our program based in New York State, so my office is the New York State Commission on National and Community Service. We've been administering AmeriCorps programs since the 90s, but a different type of AmeriCorps program, which is more of the direct service side of AmeriCorps. As I mentioned, VISTA is more behind the scenes capacity building. We recently started in 2020, we applied for a grant in the early days of the pandemic, as we were seeing a lot of communities around New York State being impacted, challenges that were long going, but that were exacerbated by the pandemic, such as learning loss, mental health. So the idea behind our AmeriCorps VISTA program is to place VISTA members within New York State agencies to work on a specific assignment for a year of service. So it's like having a job, working full-time, your schedule is full-time. You serve for a full year and you have a particular project, and depending on the mission of the agency where you serve at, that's going to dictate the type of project you work on. So to use mental health as an example, if you were at the Office of Mental Health, you would be engaging in a project on implementing trauma-informed care approaches to mental health. You could be placed, on the other hand, at the New York State Agriculture and Markets Department, and that would be more of a food security assignment. So again, it just depends on the agency that you would be placed at, and your interest in the issue area that you would be interested in. And of course, we'll make sure Joan has a link so you can see the different agencies that you would have an opportunity to serve at, and it would give you also the chance to gain experience in public administration while working for a New York State agency, at least within the capacity of an AmeriCorps VISTA member, without necessarily having to take a civil service test and go through that process. You could definitely see what it's like working for state government, and then leverage that for the next step in your career. And there's all sorts of benefits that I can go into more detail. Some of them actually are similar to Peace Corps, with like non-competitive eligibility for federal employment, but I won't go too far into that. That's the general overview of VISTA, though.
Excellent, thank you. So Jacqueline, I'm going to have Jacqueline go next. And unfortunately, Jacqueline is going to have to leave a little early. So I'm going to have you give us a quick overview of your the programs you work with. And then if anyone has questions for Jacqueline, please type those in or raise your hand right away so we can get those questions to her before she goes. And then we'll continue on with the rest of the panel. So go ahead, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much, Joan. I'm sorry to be such a pain. So for my programs that I alluded to when I was doing the introduction, external grants, funding, fully funded opportunities is what I like to emphasize for students, such as the U.S. Student Fulbright Program, the Critical Language Scholarship, the Boren Scholarship and Fellowship, the Wrangell Fellowship, Summer Enrichment Programs, the Gilman, et cetera, et cetera. I just did a review today for the Luce Scholars, which is an interesting cohort that get to spend an entire year in Asia with an organization. A lot of the students were journalists, et cetera. I love to give examples for everyone because you're all from, various disciplines potentially, or different walks of life, or have different experiences or different goals. So for my purposes, I can mention, I'm not sure, Joan, is everybody here junior or senior grad students? What is it a mix?
It'll be a mix. Most are juniors and seniors. There's probably a few underclassmen and a few grad students.
Okay, perfect. So it's a definite mix. So I could mention the Critical Language Scholarship, which commences in summer 23, but it's ending on Tuesday next week. So it's a little late, unfortunately, to start the CLS application. So I'll mention briefly the U.S. Student Fulbright Program. Now, Fulbright is one of the most prestigious grants that you can get. It is a State Department program, so you have to have a bachelor's degree at minimum and be a U.S. citizen to apply for any of the State Department and Defense Department programs that I manage for the university. And Fulbright, I say minimum of a bachelor's, which means your grant, if you were to get a Fulbright, commences after you have your bachelor's degree. So the students that just submitted in mid-October submitted an application for academic year 23-24 because they're either alum or they're graduating this fall or spring. So I work with juniors and seniors. The spring semester is the biggest recruitment time for Fulbright when I start working with students on their individual applications. You're probably wondering, well, this sounds all great, but what is Fulbright? So there's a lot of things you can do with a Fulbright grant in terms of your application process. There are English teaching assistantships where you're working alongside a classroom teacher, and it's a transformative experience from what I've heard from a lot of my students and other alum of the Fulbright program, because they're not necessarily in education or have a career goal of being in education. Fulbright welcomes a lot of different diversity among the cohorts. They're available in so many different countries. There are country summaries on their website that you can look at. And it's typically undergraduates that apply, but I once in a while, I do have grad students that apply for an ETA. Research grants. So if you are working on a research paper now, you have a proposal or you have something that you want to flesh out, or there's a particular reason to take it to said country, you can check to see if they have an open study research grant available. And that's a little bit more comprehensive than the ETA application, because you have to present a proposal. You also have to get in a letter of affiliation from an organization or institution abroad in the country that you want to work in. But I help you with that because I'm your advisor for Fulbright, and faculty on campus are just wonderful helping students apply. Now they have fully funded master's programs for Fulbright, which is very attractive. I have not yet had someone be awarded a master's. They're very, very competitive. I know it's coming, but they're available in all sorts of different places, in westernized countries, in developing countries, through with every discipline that you can imagine: engineering and conservation and medicine and journalism and communications. Like it, there's a whole list of possibilities for Fulbright. So the process for application, like I mentioned, I really start doing a lot of outreach in the spring semester because the Fulbright application opens usually March 1st. They don't update the actual grants until after it opens, which is somewhat difficult, but they don't change too much. I mean, I say that now, and then they'll probably change a lot of them, but after, the shutdown and the pandemic, some countries have really reduced the number of individuals or number of grants they're offering, while others are kind of gaining traction and trying to, really, pull in people to apply because they're undersubscribed. You're not thinking of going to maybe Bulgaria or Mongolia or East Timor-Leste to do an ETA. You're thinking maybe Brazil or India or Spain or, some of the more popular destinations. From my experience as an advisor, I try to present a lot of different options for students because you may have a gut feeling about a particular country or region, but you might just have an end goal of getting a grant. You want to have an international experience. You want it to be funded where you don't have any financial liability, which is Fulbright because everything is covered. So I try to advise students, hey, look at these other countries where they don't have as many applicants, like Kosovo or like Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan. Some of these other countries, they get like 3 applicants. And they're fully funded. They're fully funded grant opportunities. It's under the umbrella of the State Department. So if it wasn't, a good situation to go there, those grants would be pulled. And I think there's some similarity there with Peace Corps, thinking because it's the State Department, knowing that you have that backing. So there's a lot of individual advisement that goes into Fulbright because it really depends on who you are, where you want to go, what you want to do, what your background is, et cetera. So I welcome opportunities to talk with you moving forward, even this semester, if you want to get a head start and kind of, thinking about Fulbright, you can always just let me know. And I know Joan will send my contact information as well.
Yes, we definitely will. Does anyone have any questions for Jacqueline before she goes?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
What's the typical duration of the ETA programs?
An academic year. So it depends on where you apply though, because some countries have very different academic structure than we do in the US. Like we're used to the fall and spring, right? That's an academic year. Some of our programs, like in Australia, New Zealand, they'll start in January. I had an ETA in Taiwan that got back this past summer. She was deferred because of the pandemic, but then they let her go in January. So there's lots of different, start times. I think there's a little bit of a gray area there now because of the pandemic, but generally you can figure on being abroad the fall and spring semester, like August to May or September to June. But I actually do have someone going to Cambodia for an ETA in December because it's just a different structure, depending on where you're going. So we could look at that, in country summaries for sure. But it isn't until after you graduate. So you don't have to worry about Fulbright interfering with your program that you're in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Any other last questions for Jacqueline? All right, thanks so much for joining us, Jacqueline. And if you can pop me a quick email with like all of
I
the
will.
website links, and then I'll have Taylor send that out to everybody tomorrow. So
Perfect. Thanks, guys. I'm sorry I have to go. It was nice to meet everybody.
thank you so much.
Take care.
All right, Mark, I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about what's happening with, again, like all of these other programs, the world is opening back up again. So tell us what's happening with study abroad, what options are available to students as undergrads, grads. Are there options between if you're doing a gap year? What kinds of things are out there?
Yeah, so like you said, and like what everyone said, the world is reopening slowly but surely. So study abroad has reopened, at least in New Albany. And yeah, we do have a good amount of options currently. We are running about 15 to 20 programs through U Albany itself. But as a SUNY school, you can study abroad through any SUNY university. So that's a little bonus. Yeah, so since COVID, many programs are currently suspended. So we have 20 currently active programs, but we are slowly but surely reopening programs that we had in the past. So that is something to look into throughout the next coming semesters, if anything else pops up. But yeah, generally studying abroad is open to a wide range of students, basically everyone. Many programs don't accept freshmen. I think above freshman status, you are mostly eligible to study abroad. Many students study abroad sophomore, junior year, but it is absolutely possible to study abroad senior year and in grad school as well. I know currently in U Albany, at least the programs that I run, we have a good amount of grad programs in like Italy, Australia, in the UK, and the Netherlands, I believe. So yeah, there are options out there for grad school. Studying abroad as an undergrad, definitely talk with your academic advisor, make sure it could work academically. You wouldn't miss graduation or yeah, so basically I always recommend that the best thing to do is talk with your academic advisor, make sure that it could work, and just get all the information you possibly can. If you are interested in studying abroad for grad school, it does require a little more approvals from up above in your department and your academic advisor there as well. But it is very possible. And that just requires a good amount of talking and communication.
And Mark, did you say you did study abroad when you were a student? Do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience as a study abroad student?
Yeah, so as I studied abroad 3 times in undergrad. When I entered U Albany, I was an undeclared major, had no clue what I was going to study. But I did my research, narrowed down my options, and decided to study in Sweden. And I had to like declare a major temporarily. And I declared my major in like international conflict resolution. And when I was in Sweden, that was my first time outside the United States. So taking an international conflict resolution, internationally focused class, it really introduced me quite directly to global perspectives on everything. For example, we talked about like the Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s and how each country perceived that war, how each country tried resolving it. So that was an amazing experience learning about that. In which case, after studying abroad in Sweden, I returned and realized that I declared my major in globalization and I wanted to have a globally focused career. And after studying in Sweden, I realized that, hey, learning a language is very valuable. So then I decided to study abroad 2 more times, and I studied in Chile both times, picking up Spanish, learning Spanish from almost nothing. And in a matter of like 3 months, I got my Spanish proficiency up to like lower advanced. So definitely there's a lot that goes into studying abroad, and it's very cheesy to say, but what you look to get out of studying abroad and what you put into it is what ultimately results, you see results. So yeah, each experience is kind of a build your own. If you want to get an internship, absolutely get an internship, look into that. If you want to go on a research opportunity, you could do that as well. Really, the options are almost limitless. So really kind of, again, it's very cheesy, but build your own adventure. What do you want to get out of it? And yeah, that's the starting point. It's kind of a stepping stone into an international, internationally focused mind.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm going to stop for a second and see if anyone has questions for any of the panelists. I have more, but let me make sure we get your questions asked first. So anyone in the room or anyone on Zoom, any questions at this point? So let's talk a little bit about the application process. For all of these programs, there's some kind of an application process or selection process or whatever. So I don't know who wants to start. I'll let you guys decide who wants to start to tell us a little bit about that for your program.
Yeah, sure. I don't mind starting off.
All right.
Yeah, so with AmeriCorps, and this is going to go for all AmeriCorps programs, there's a variety of, not just VISTA. I'd like you to apply for VISTA, but if you complete an application within the My AmeriCorps portal, which can be found at my.americorps.gov. And I think right when you go to that page, you'll see search opportunities, create your account. I think it's worded that way. So once you click the link, it guides you through. You're essentially putting your resume into AmeriCorps' system. And then you have a login with that. And once you have your profile built out, it asks you things such as your education, your professional experiences, your community service skills. There's I think a brief narrative. It asks you about why you are interested in serving. Once you fill out all these things, then you have your online application in the My AmeriCorps portal is what it's called. And you can use that to do a single click apply to any positions that you find within that portal, be it AmeriCorps State and National, which is more of a direct service side of AmeriCorps, or AmeriCorps VISTA. So for our program within New York State, we're based within New York State government. However, we're an AmeriCorps program, so all our opportunities are going to be found within this portal. And once you come across our opportunities, and I'll share those links as well following this meeting, so in case you want to read the position description and assignment. Once you have that portal application, then you just apply with a click of a button essentially, and then it comes to my inbox. I have a login into that My AmeriCorps portal with kind of a different account as an administrator, and then I see what applications come in, and we reach out and set up an interview. And if you end up getting selected, you should know that you're serving as an AmeriCorps VISTA member. You're an AmeriCorps member first, as opposed to being affiliated with the state, but you're serving within New York State government. So the nature of your work will be very much like someone within state government would be involved in. You would just be doing it as an AmeriCorps member. And again, I'll be sure to share these links and such to guide you through that process.
Excellent. And Anthony, you can feel free if you want to, you have them handy to drop them into the chat.
Oh,
now.
sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
We'll pull those and be sure to send them in a follow-up email afterwards as well. So Megan and Heather, do you want to talk a little bit about the Peace Corps application process?
Sure. I mean, I know that there's been a lot of, there's been significant updates to the application process since I applied 20 years ago. So I think Megan's probably better at responding to that.
But tell us, can I just say, Heather, can you tell us about your experience, tell us about the stress level or the, kind of that part of it? Because I think that's something people always wonder about as well.
Sure. I mean, so as I said earlier, like I kind of knew I wanted to do Peace Corps pretty early on. So really started thinking about, what are and I interviewed a lot of returned Peace Corps volunteers. So I was really fortunate. I had a bunch of professors that had served, various different times since the Peace Corps began. So I interviewed a lot of professors and I took opportunities to go to some returned Peace Corps volunteer groups just to get a sense of, what service was like, what could I expect, what are some skills I should build in advance. Some of the best advice I got was, not only to, learn another language and study abroad, but, also think about like, what skills are you bringing and, try to develop those. So, so that, I spent a couple of years thinking about that and, volunteering in local organizations or, in my community. And studying abroad and learning another language. I learned French. So, the application was, similar to, applying to college. Like it was in the sense, like you really wanted to put a thoughtful personal essay together. And there was a lot of questions about, health and wellness and things like that. But, and then I remember the question of, do you have a preference of where you would serve? And I remember speaking to a recruiter before I applied, and the recruiter was saying, well, we always need French-speaking volunteers, and that probably means you're going to be sent to sub-Saharan Africa if you get in. So think through that. Like, is that something that you are willing to do? And and I spent a lot of time reading and thinking about that and talking to people. So, just putting together an application was, like anything else, something that you care about, you put a lot of time into. And I applied during Christmas break or the holiday break. And I remember getting I had an interview in February with the recruiting office in Boston, because I'm from Rhode Island. And it was a 2-hour-long conversation. And I remember thinking in that, like, I think I'm really going to like Peace Corps because it was really about you and about the experience and about like learning about the different communities in which you could serve. And I just really came out of that saying, like, I really hope I get this. And then on March 17th, I got my award, like, welcome to Peace Corps, you've been selected. So it was a stressful process in the sense that you had a lot of work and, you had to be intentional about it. Or at least, I put a lot of intention into it. But, it was a manageable process, I thought. And, that was, again, 20 years ago. And there was a lot of uncertainty about where you would be sent. And that's changed a lot now. And I'll pass it to Megan.
Yeah, you're right. So the process for Peace Corps went through a really big overhaul in like 2015. Before it was like, hey, you apply, and once you get your invitation, that's when you figure out where you're going and what you're doing. But they were starting to introduce that change. I applied in 2014. I had a little bit of say. But nowadays, you can do the application one of two ways. You can look through all the openings that we have on our website, which I'll drop in the chat. And if you find one that really speaks to you, you can apply directly to that one like you would any other job. And the other way to do it is to do what we call our server needed most application, which is always right at the top of that volunteer openings page. You see a little red apply now button there. And that one is, if you're kind of more open or to where you'd be going, or you don't really know what you want to go or do or where you want to go, there is a point in that resume or in that, sorry, that application where you can put in preferences that you have of what work you would like to be doing or where you would like to be going or not going. And then what happens is one of our placement officers takes a look at your preferences, your skill set, and our needs at the time, and then places you in a country accordingly, which you know before you do the interview for. So it's not a big surprise like it used to be a couple years ago. Another thing I want to point out is that you can only have one active application going at a time. So I always tell people, if you're like looking through the openings and there's 3 that you're really interested in, do the server needed most application and just list those three positions in the application. It's also a part of the overhaul has been really about kind of making it much more streamlined and easier and quicker to apply to. So as long as you're spending some time getting your resume together and your motivation statement together, by the time you sit down to do the application, it usually takes people like an hour to complete at that point. It's a lot of just entering in information. But your resume, different than a normal resume, can be up to 3 full pages in length. So we want to see, your not only your work experience and your education experience, but your volunteer experiences. Are you holding leadership positions on campus? Are you involved in extracurricular activities? What is your language learning like? Like all of those things. So please go into depth about anything, because you have 3 pages to work with. And then the motivation statement is just a 500 word or fewer essay where you answer 1, why do you want to be a Peace Corps volunteer? And 2, how do you see yourself dealing with whatever hardships may arise? And there's no right or wrong answer here. No one's going to follow up with you when you're in service and be like, you said you would be journaling to, no one's going to do that. But they just want you to, be aware it's not going to be all butterflies and rainbows. There are going to be very difficult days. And how do you see yourself dealing with those hard times, right? So it's obvious that if you've done your research and everything, kind of how you approach that answer. As far as application timing goes, there are 4 deadlines spread throughout the year. For seniors who are looking to depart right after they graduate in May, the 2 that I want to really point out are October 1st, which obviously has just passed. But anything with an October 1st deadline historically leaves in April, May, or June of the following year. And then there's also a January 1st deadline. So January 1st positions will depart in July, August, or September. So it gives you a little bit more time. The reason I do talk about the October one, though, is a lot of those positions have been extended to either November 15th or December 1st. So there's still time to get an application in if there's one that you're really looking at that, speaks to you. Just because we didn't get enough applications with only that October 1st deadline. So that's why you're still seeing some that are kind of not the norm on the website.
Excellent, thank you. Mark, let's talk a little bit about how you apply or what is the process to do study abroad.
Yeah, so at least through UAlbany, applying is pretty simple. You look on the Study Abroad webpage and you find a program that you're interested in. There's a big button that says apply now, and you start an application. Awesome. So that application entails generally the same materials. So 1, a nice short essay, say like 500 word essay or less, saying the exact same things that Megan said. Why did you choose this place? What do you look to get out of it? Issues you may encounter. And similarly, it's not like end of the world if you put effort into it and it's like, wow, this program could really work for you. That's awesome. Additionally, 1 or 2 academic references, depending on the program, passport information, because you will need that. And that's generally about it. Also a transcript as well. But other than that, that's just about it for the first part of the application. So there's really 2 parts. There's that pre-decision where you are applying directly to UAlbany or the SUNY school. And in that case, you would apply to us, we'll review your application, and then we'll move you into the next part, which is you would work directly with that university abroad. And they'll send you information. You'll apply through their website as well. And then you'll be into the next steps of getting all the information possible, housing, registration, enrollment, everything in that nature will be covered in that second part of the application. Generally, the process or time frame of that is for the, for the spring programs, the application cycle would go on the fall semester beforehand, and that would generally go from, let's say, August 15th. Sorry, my dog is barking. They'll generally go from like August 15th until, sorry, August 15th until, let's say, October 1st as well, for the spring semester. And for the fall semester applications, excuse me one second. All right, let's see if that worked. It did not. So yeah, and then for the fall semester, the application period is generally from mid-December-ish until March 1st. And generally after that first application deadline, up until that October 1st or March 1st, you'll have about a month of working with the other university until the whole application process is done, and you move on to the actual moving forward, making everything work part of the study abroad process. Yeah.
Excellent. And I will just add, because I've heard Jacqueline's presentation many times, she talked about it a little bit, Jacqueline Lederman, but for Fulbright and some of the other State Department grants she works with, she actually helps you with that whole application process. Those are pretty arduous and involved application processes for all of those programs. And so if you have an interest, you just reach out to her and I can connect you with her at any point in time. And she does information sessions about all those programs throughout the year. And then once you connect with her, then she'll help you in terms of kind of guiding you through that whole application process. So let me ask again, are there questions from any of the students? Give you a chance to think. All right, so I guess my next question for any of our panelists is just in terms of thinking about these types of programs, and how do you think the program you work with in particular, or just any of these kinds of out-of-the-box experiences in general, can help a student in terms of their career goals? Like, what does that do for you down the road as you are applying to jobs or grad schools or law schools or any of those things down the road? How do you think these things can benefit you? Heather, you look like you're ready to answer.
Sure. So I think like tonight our panel or our discussion is around gap years, right? So I took a 5-year gap between my undergrad and grad school, and granted, in that time I did Peace Corps, I did some odd jobs, I worked for a small foundation, and all of those cumulative experiences really helped me think through, like, okay, what is my next step career wise? What motivates me? What gets me up in the morning, out of bed and excited to work, because you spend so much of your life working, so you should feel passionate about what you're doing, and so that 5-year gap really helped me think through what was I passionate about doing. And then the second question became like, okay, so now that I've sort of figured that out, or at least I've figured out what I'm passionate about, like what does education look like around that? And so kind of thinking through what kind of programs exist, and like learning about, when I was an undergrad, I didn't really have a degree in public administration on my radar. So I graduated with a degree in political science and French and history. So I didn't really have public administration on my radar. I thought maybe an IR job or something like that after Peace Corps. So it really helped me think through what was I interested in doing, and then finding a grads program that I would help me achieve that. And so in many ways, it's a combination of my Peace Corps experience, it's a combination of my work experience, but they were all rooted in like this idea of community development. What does that mean? What does that look like? And how do you make a career out of that? And then building the skills and the network and like mentors and everything around that.
Excellent. And Heather, tell them what you do now. I don't know if you mentioned that earlier or not.
No, sorry, I didn't. Currently, I work at the United Way of the Greater Capital Region, right in downtown Albany. And I work specifically on the community impact team. So we make community investments to lots of local partners across the greater capital region, 7 counties in or 8 counties now in our capital region. So I've taken a lot of that, how do we work in community development, and I'm, able and so fortunate to be able to do that here in our community.
Excellent. Who else would like to jump in and tell us what you think the impact of these things can have on your future career? Go ahead, Anthony.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll highlight the people-to-people connection that you get through these programs. And I know this came up earlier. I think Megan mentioned that being one of her big takeaways, the relationships that you come away with, and it runs the spectrum from like lifelong friends that you can always reach out to and count on, to the professional acquaintances that are also there should you need a lead for a job, or just connection. And I'll give an example of this, and it's interesting that Heather is on this call because we had lunch a couple of weeks before I took off for Paraguay. At the time, and I served to remind, because I mentioned at the beginning, I served in the Peace Corps in Paraguay. And at that time, her colleague had served in Peace Corps Paraguay in the 80s. And I had met her through a professor at Rockefeller College. So there's all these neat connections here that I'm seeing. And so we had this lunch arranged, and Heather's colleague, I think, invited Heather as well, since Heather had served in the Peace Corps. And we had a really nice conversation to answer my questions about what to expect out of service. And if any of you all end up taking the Peace Corps path, you would be able to certainly call on Heather, Megan, or myself, or anyone else in the capital region. There's a Returned Peace Corps volunteer group that Heather's been to meetings here in the capital region and in every city and region throughout the country. So it's like an established network that you get when you serve in these programs. And of course, that's going to help you a great deal when you're ready to take the next step in your career after whatever program you get into, be it Peace Corps, be it AmeriCorps. You'll have lifelong bonds with people, but then also just a network across the country where you can reach out for support professionally. And then I'll just mention one other, I guess, more tangible thing that you can get out of both Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA is non-competitive eligibility for federal employment. And I have several friends that are working in the federal government now. I had a brief stint as an asylum officer with the Department of Homeland Security. It was very intense. I ended up resigning. I'm much happier where I am now. But I bring that up just to say that it's a completely viable path into federal employment. And basically how it works is you get a year after your service with this special hiring status that a federal agency can work around the process that they have to go through to hire someone from the general public, and hire you with your non-competitive eligibility status. You're not guaranteed a job, but it opens up doors when you have this special hiring status, and you can put it on pause. If you decide to go to grad school, you can pause it and then restart it after grad school. And if you're interested in federal employment, that is definitely a viable path. And I would encourage just to get a sense of how it works. If you go to usajobs.gov, there's a filter when you're searching for the jobs. It's pretty prominent. It says Peace Corps and VISTA alum, and you can check that box and then see what comes up. You can see what regions of the countries are hiring, and the different federal agencies that are hiring non-competitive eligibility individuals.
Excellent. Yes, that's a great benefit. So Megan, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that is one of the 3 really big benefits I like to hit on. The other one is our Coverdell Fellows program, which is our graduate school program. So it's a partnership that we have with about 140 schools across the US, about 220 degree programs, and they have to cover at least 25% of your tuition costs. Some of them will go all the way up to 100%. So if you're kind of questioning, do I do Peace Corps and then graduate school, or do graduate school and then Peace Corps, take a look at this. And I just dropped the link in the chat so you can look at all of the programs. It's potentially could save you a lot of money, so it's definitely worth taking a look at. Yeah, NCE status, you're not competing against the general public, and sometimes you can just sometimes I see job postings where it's like, if you have NCE status, email your resume to this person, and I'm like, woo, I get to skip USA Jobs altogether. That's always a win, because USA Jobs is the worst. And then the last one I want to talk about, because obviously we're like, I agree with everything that everyone else has said too about, like, you know, you're gaining a lot of really relevant skills. You're becoming a better global citizen. But that doesn't pay the bills, right? So Peace Corps, one of the other benefits is that you get a resettling in allowance, and it's about 10,000 US dollars now, pre-tax. So, and that's money to do with however you please. If you want to use that for first and last month rent an apartment when you come back, great. If you want to, you know, help use that money to supplement your graduate school studies, wonderful. If you want to go on a around the world trip, great. Do it. There's a lot of volunteers who end up doing that when they close their service. So those are kind of the three big ones I like to hit on. But I think anything like this, any of these programs are going to look really great on a grad school resume or a job resume, just because it's something that sets you apart. It's different. You're getting out of the United States, and like I wish everyone had the opportunity to do that. I know it's not feasible for everyone to do it, but I think it makes you a better American, but a better global citizen too. So.
Excellent. And I will just add that Rockefeller, maybe all of you Albany, is a Cloverdale partner as well. So you can come back and get your grad degree here using that. So Mark, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the field of studying abroad, I think that studying abroad is kind of like a stepping stone, or almost a like I don't know, a sample of getting some international experience to maybe put you on track to go on Peace Corps or some other international operation or program. So it's definitely an awesome thing. And as Megan just said, it's amazing on a resume. It looks great for jobs, grad schools, and just getting that international job experience. If you go on internships, research, and just a cultural introduction to, like, again, as Megan said, to become a more global citizen. Because like what I said, I left the United States I never left the United States until I went abroad, studying abroad. And that kind of changed everything, because I came back, knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I directly applied my study abroad experiences to my career. So yeah, definitely it's an amazing opportunity. Everything here is an amazing opportunity. And just, you got to take that first step and go for it.
Excellent. And I will add also, because Jacqueline had to leave, one of the best benefits of all the programs she works with the State Department is they are all fully funded, as in you can go do this study or this experience abroad that's fully funded. You can learn critical language through the critical language program, fully funded. Someone's paying you to do that, because the State Department is doing this to groom people to ultimately, in many cases, work in State Department type jobs, and giving you the experiences that'll make you qualified candidates for those jobs later on. So lots of great experiences. We are about out of time. I've got 1 minute. If I can keep you all just for a couple more minutes, and maybe if each of you could just one final thing that you wish you'd have known, or you wish someone would have told you, or that you want to say that would encourage students who are kind of thinking, is this something for me? What would you like to tell them? And I'll go ahead. Let's start with Anthony this time.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is what you're looking for. It's very specific, and I always think back on it, especially with student loans being in the news so much recently. But I think Peace Corps didn't do a great job when I went in about explaining the public student loan forgiveness program. I think they've changed, just based on communications I've seen in promoting how that program works. But your service it qualifies you towards the public student loan forgiveness program, but you have to make sure you're in the right repayment plan. And you would get all that information. And this is for AmeriCorps as well as Peace Corps. So just understanding how that program works so you can take advantage of it. Basically, after 120 qualifying payments, which is 10 years, you get your federal loans forgiven. And who knows, maybe more will get wiped away before you even get to 10 years.
Excellent. Mark, go ahead. Let's do gentlemen first this time. We'll end with
I think the biggest thing you could do, in my experience, is start early and be very active, asking questions, and be very, very I don't know, like in my case, when I wanted to study abroad more than once, I was like in my academic advisor's office like twice a week, once a week, just almost like to an annoying extent. But like be very familiar with who to talk to, find out who to get that information from, and just ask, because someone will put you on the right track and you can get things to work out that way.
Excellent. Megan.
Yeah, the public student loan forgiveness is a good one. I wish I would have known a little bit more about that too. And just kind of to go off of that, for at least I'm 99% sure. Peace Corps, it's just $0 payments during those 2 years because it's based off of your income. And because you're not making a lot of money in terms of US dollars, that's what they're going off of, right? So 2 out of those 10 years are completely free for you. So yeah, that's a really good benefit. I mean, I agree. I think with Mark, I think just like reaching out and talking to people, getting a good sense of what any of these programs are, the best way to do that is to just hear from people who have done it. So reach out to any of us. I'll drop my email in the chat. I'm sure there's other people who would be willing to talk about their experiences as well. And if you have a certain thing that you want to do in Peace Corps or a certain place you want to go, reach out and let me know, because I can put you in contact with someone who did that job in that country and they can speak to it, you know, more one-on-one. So yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest thing. I kind of just happened upon the Peace Corps. It was a very weird road for me to the Peace Corps. I was a zookeeper beforehand. So it just was weird. So I say people should probably look into it a little bit more than I did. It all worked out, but
I love it. Excellent. Go ahead, Heather.
Sure. So, just to echo, my fellow panelists, because those are all really great insights. And I was in the same boat, like, yep, wish I knew more about that going in. And, I spent a lot of time thinking about the Peace Corps, and I spent a lot of time like reading up about, the country I was going to serve in, and as much as I could learn about. But I think the thing I wish someone would have told me in advance was that no matter how much preparation you do, like, you just have to be flexible, and you really just have to kind of suspend or put aside like your expectations of how things ought to go and just accept how ththings are happening and try to like not so much make sense of it, but understand that you are in my case, like I was in a different country, in a different culture, and that there was a reason why people were doing things the way they were doing, even though for me I was like, but of course we would want to do it this other way. So things don't generally go as planned, and just being really flexible with that. I wish someone had kind of not so much told me, but given me that sense of like, your service is going to be awesome, but it's not going to be what you expect, and you just have to like go with that and be flexible and use that just as a learning opportunity for yourself and your community, and learn how to problem solve on the fly.
Excellent. All right. Well, I would just like to thank all of you. We appreciate you taking the time out of your Monday evening to join us and share about your experiences, share about these great opportunities. Like I said, many of them put information in the chat. We will pull all of that, and I'll have Taylor send a follow-up email to both the class and anyone else who joined us tonight. She'll send that tomorrow with all of those links and their contact information if you want to follow up with any of them in the future. But thank you again so much. We certainly appreciate you taking the time to join us.